Today on the show, at the beginning of the show, we get into an article from the Business Insider about the new changes to your team's college football uniform. And then we have Mr. College Football on Fans' favorite fan, David Berger, on the show, talking about an article about his recent predictions. And trust me, guys, these are the predictions you want to hear about in college football. This is Football Friday. This is the ATL Fan Podcast on fansfavoritefan.com. Right now, I just want to tell you guys about a little secret, especially if you are a small business owner or you're a CEO of a company that's about to be a Fortune 500 company, or you're one of those people that just works from home or remote because your company is somewhere out there and it's not in the Atlanta area. Well, I want to let you know about Spaces Midtown East, and Spaces Midtown East has a friendly staff. They are very open and welcome to the type of business that you are running. And just to tell you more about it, we have the regional manager here from Spaces Midtown East, Steve Choi.
Oh, thank you, Alex, and thanks for getting that secret out there. And absolutely not many people know, but I think they're starting to learn more and more about what we do. We here at Spaces Midtown, we provide both collaborative space as well as private space for all types of professionals, whether that be individuals like yourself or small companies and even large companies. And so I really do appreciate you giving us a chance to get a shout out there. And I absolutely enjoy having you and Fans' favorite fan come out. So if anybody out there wants to come take a look at what Spaces Midtown East is about, let us know that Alex sent you. We'll offer you a 5-day test drive. Go to www.spacesworks.com and come on in and set up a time, and we'll have you come in and take a test drive for free.
Thank you, Steve, for those kind words and that information, because I definitely couldn't remember that off the top of my head. So I definitely appreciate that. It is a block north from the Fox Theater, and if you've lived in this city for about a year, you know where the Fox Theater is. So just check them out. They're right on Peachtree Street, and I'm going to put the link to their website in our show description. So be sure to check out Spaces Midtown, and they'll definitely hook you up. Well, the NFL is just pretty brutal, especially during preseason. It seems like there's been a lot of injuries that have happened. You had Nick Foles with the Eagles last night getting dinged up. You had Isaiah Wynn, highly number one draft pick for the Patriots, just kind of planted on his foot the wrong way, and now he's injured. Looks like he'll be out for most of the season. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Hello, friends. This is the ATL Fan Podcast. I'm Alex Berger, and today we got a lot going on. We have David Berger joining us. We also get into an article about different uniform changes going on in college football, but I thought it was pretty funny that the Browns actually put out a thing this week where their fans will get free beer when they win their first NFL game. So I know Steve Choi is pretty excited about that. I think he wants to be a Browns fan. Steve is actually joining me doing his Spaces work, and thanks to him, the ATL Fan Podcast gets taken care of very, very, very nicely. So thank you, Steve Choi. But yes, a lot to get to on this Football Friday. Glad that you can join us. And it seems like this past week, a lot of different sports news has come out. And we put a poll out there on Fans Favorite Fan Twitter about the Maryland situation. So if you want to weigh in on the Maryland situation, go to Fans Favorite Fan Twitter and vote on that poll, because here at Fans Favorite Fan, we want to be interactive with you guys, the fans, because we are serving you guys. So we definitely want your voice to be heard. Well, I know with the second season, I haven't really talked a lot about Georgia Tech. I mean, because it seems like it's the same old, same old. Still running the triple option. Defense at times is either great or terrible. But recently, they've released new uniforms, because last year around this time, actually, they decided to partner up with Adidas, and Adidas was going to supply everything that Russell could not, because, as you know, like, just from a business standpoint, when you can find someone that could supply all your needs pretty much for what you need for a football program. By the way, running a football program is a real logistical, could be a real logistical nightmare, just FYI, but I don't try to get into that. But anyways, Russell wasn't providing balls. They weren't providing shoes. They had to get all that from Nike. So what ended up happening was they had to switch brands, and Adidas is providing all that. They just don't provide uniforms. They provide balls, shoes, all the essential things you need to run a football program. So right now, they released their uniforms on Wednesday, and it was a pretty shocking thing when they decided to switch from Adidas to Russell, because tweet me if you know the story better than I do, but I'm assuming that there was some alumni for Georgia Tech that was working for Russell that was on the board, and that's how they got the Russell connection, because all their athletic teams wore Russell uniforms, but now they're all going to be wearing Adidas uniforms. But most recently, the football uniforms were released, and they look pretty cool. I think they have a good Georgia Tech look to them, but I'm not too thrilled about the numbers. And I don't like how the numbers look, because I'm just not a big fan of what the Georgia Tech numbers look back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think they're trying to go a little towards that, a little bit that, and I'm not really too thrilled about that. I like what's kind of inside the numbers, the design inside the numbers, I think is pretty cool. But the thing that I'm most disappointed about is that they aren't going with 3 jerseys. They're only going with 2 jerseys, and they're both white. They're not going with an alternative color. I would like to see them go back to that navy blue when they busted it out against LSU in 2008 in the Chick-fil-A Bowl. I thought those looked pretty cool, and they've also worn in a couple bowls since, but I don't think they've had a lot of luck in those jerseys, so maybe that's one of the reasons why. But I mean, I think that navy blue looks cool. I know a lot of Tech people are kind of like, oh, we don't want to look like Notre Dame with gold helmets and the navy blue jerseys, but it's a lighter navy blue, and it's a darker gold than Notre Dame. Just kind of food for thought. I'm just going to put it out there for you Georgia Tech people. But one of the ways that I discovered this was through an article in the Business Insider with Corky Gaines, who wrote this article. And I first got to tell you, going through this, I was like, he uses Iowa State's uniforms, and man, they look pretty cool. You got to look this up. I'm going to put the article in the show description, the link to it, so you guys can look back, because this is a podcast. I'm not showing you visual things. I'm just giving you audio. So that's one of the frustrating things about podcasting. You see something and then you're like, oh, I want to talk about that on my show, and then you just have to describe it the best you can. So kind of like with Larry Munson towards the end of his age, he had to have a guy like Scott Howard describe what he wasn't going to say because he was getting up there in age. So throwback to Larry Munson. But I think they show Air Forces, because they go in alphabetical order. They show Air Forces uniforms. I think those look pretty cool with like this stone kind of gray, mountain face kind of gray that they have to their uniforms, and a little bit of a throwback to old squadron patches that they have on there. I think Arizona State looks pretty cool, especially with their home jersey with the watermark thing they have going on with the Arizona State flag. That looks pretty tight. I don't know why they have Arkansas in here. Arkansas pretty much has the same uniforms it had last year. Boston College, I'm not really feeling Boston College's new uniforms that they have. Still, it's like with a school like Boston College, you want to have that classic but a little bit modern, and they're just not doing it for me. Florida, I don't know why they have Florida listed. I guess because they went to the Jordan brand. The only thing that's really different about Florida's jerseys from last year is they're just replacing the Nike check with the Jordan Jumping Man logo. So there's nothing really impressive about Florida. They have the orange jersey in here because they're getting it from their Twitter feed. But I think it would be cool to see Florida in more of the orange jerseys. But I do like the white jersey with the white pants. I'll say that. Hawaii still looks the same. It looks like Houston's going to come out with 90 versions of their helmets. So be sure to check out that. I think that looks pretty cool. I like Illinois because they have Illinois listed here with their gunmetal navy blue helmets. Iowa's uniform, the only thing that's going to change this year is the numbers. And Kansas, their uniform looks a little sleeker. They went more with a richer blue that they're going to go with this year. Louisville's numbers have changed a little bit, and oh yeah, by the way, that guy that spoke out that said that we could that we can handle their wide receivers at Alabama, or no, it's like we can go against their DBs. We can we can get into coverage with their DBs. So that'll be an interesting matchup with Alabama and Louisville. Maryland's got a lot of flack, but still this past week, what's going on with them? But I don't know why he has Maryland listed here. It looks pretty much the same. Minnesota, in their numbers, they have a pretty cool design that they have going on, and they're going to go with an alternative gray. I like that Ole Miss is going to have a white helmet against Texas Tech. Missouri's doing the same thing. They're going to have a white helmet with a black tiger. Also, too, speaking of Ole Miss, they released their new mascot, and it's a shark, going away from the rebel look because of things of the Old South, but representing that land shark defense that they've had this past couple of years. So Oklahoma's uniforms are pretty much the same thing. The only thing that's happening is kind of like with Florida. They're getting the jumping man thing going on. And the Yankees are, I mean, not the Yankees, excuse me. Yeah, they're kind of all the Yankees of college football, but Notre Dame, when they're playing Yankee Stadium, or they're doing these pinstripes on the side of their sleeves, I think that looks a little dumb. And, oh, yeah, that helmet doesn't look, yeah, they're going with this weird-looking helmet that's not gold, but it's actually a black thing. But they're doing it for some reason to attribute to... for Yankee Stadium. And then you have Tennessee doing a checkered look on their helmets. To me, I feel like that's creative with Tennessee. But, I feel like that's creative. But, that's really much all I have to really say about that. Also with Oregon now, I feel like just because they're right across the street from Nike, and Nike uses them as pretty much their guinea pig to see what works, what doesn't work, what looks good, what doesn't look good. But this time, I feel like Oregon's new uniforms that they're going with, they look really cool. The numbers are big. You even have on like the yellow tennis ball version of the uniform that they wear. They actually have like a thing where they have the black patch where you put the person's name, and the person's name is that tennis ball yellow that they have going on there. The black jersey I think is cool. I don't like the way the color of the numbers look at that kind of green. It's more like a throw-up green. Steve knows what I'm talking about with that throw-up green. Also, UCF, which is actually one of the schools that we covered, South Florida, they have new uniform combination. I think it looks all right. The thing I'm not fired up about, same thing with the Oregon stuff, is that in their black alternative jersey, it's like different. It's like the whole color palette of green on their numbers. Like it goes from like dark green to light green in the middle, then it goes down to dark green in the numbers. Maybe the way I'm describing it sounds cool, but to me it just doesn't look good. I don't like that alternative number thing that they have going on. Rutgers with the all white jerseys, that looks pretty cool. So these changes are coming to your team soon. Well, we just want to welcome back to the show Mr. College Football for Fans, favoritefan.com, Mr. David Berger. David is just an encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to college football, and he recently put out an article on Fans Favorite Fan about Berger's bold predictions for the 2018 college football season. David, how are you doing today, man?
I'm pretty good. Not too bad. Just finished up with practice. So just got home after a late Thursday practice, but pretty good overall. A little tired, but not too bad.
Hey, well, I appreciate you coming on. I know you're in the August grind right now.
Yeah, it's pretty tough right now. Right in the middle of our season, we've actually had 2 games. So just because the way the academic calendar is set up for the school system I teach in, we got to get sports done, pretty fast. Our seasons are kind of long, but they hurry it up, and they start usually a little bit earlier than most sports normally would. So right now we're on to our 3rd game next week for football. But so far we're 2-0, doing pretty well, and looking to get another good win this week.
Well, there you go. I first want to just start off with the talking about the American Conference, because you have Memphis. You have them predicted to win it all, and so do you think it's just going to be Memphis and UCF in the American?
Yeah, the American's it's pretty wide open to a certain degree, but I think Memphis has the more complete overall team in the American. They're going to have a big challenge, with UCF, Houston, and Navy. But overall, I think Memphis has the weapons, especially at on the defensive backside and especially at wide receiver. The offense they run is pretty high tempo, kind of almost an air raid offense, and they do a good job of it. So I think Memphis has all the tools, and with UCF kind of rebuilding a little bit after Scott Frost left. But granted, they got Mackenzie Milton, a great quarterback, so I don't know how much they're going to be rebuilding on offense, but they're going to be more rebuilding on defense because it's really hard to replace a guy like Shaquem Griffin. So overall, though, I think Memphis has the tools, and plus they're playing with the revenge factor in the back of their minds, and they would love nothing more than if they got to the conference championship to beat UCF, just like UCF beat them last year in the conference championship. So I take Memphis, I guess, for an emotional reason, but I also take Memphis just across the board. I think they are going to be the more complete team in the American. With Navy running the triple option, you kind of never know what will happen, but Navy's going to be rebuilding as well. And then Houston's going to be back on the up and up, in my opinion. I think Houston will have a better year than they did last year, but still, I think this conference is Memphis's to lose. And I think in the end, it's going to get down again to Memphis and UCF, and I just think Memphis is going to win it this time.
Mm-hmm. No, I know we talked about this before, and you're with a lot of the college football media, and it's pretty much Clemson's to lose in the ACC. But do you see anyone emerging like Miami or FSU or say like someone to come out of nowhere like Virginia?
I don't think there's really many underdogs in the ACC this year. I think, your top perennial teams, those are going to be the ones that are going to kind of lead the way this year. Definitely Clemson. This again, just like I said about Memphis, the ACC is going to be Clemson's to lose, like the American is Memphis's to lose. So I really am going to take a strong poll, and I'm really going to strongly go with Clemson this year. But, yeah, I think Miami and Virginia Tech have the best chance to also play for the ACC title. Florida State will be a rebounding team. They'll be a pretty decent team this year under Willie Taggart's first year. He inherits a pretty talented squad as a first-year coach, but I just don't think this is their year to really challenge Clemson. I think when they go into their game against Clemson, it's going to be in Tallahassee. So, of course, it's going to be a huge, huge home game for Florida State, probably the biggest Florida State game of the season, barring their first game of the year against Virginia Tech at home. So I think Florida State will be ready. But, again, I could totally see that game, very hyped up at the beginning of the week. Game day may be there. It just gets, all the media attention, all the media publicity and everything. And everybody says, oh, this could be it. Can Florida State dethrone Clemson? And then I could totally see Clemson winning by 30. So, take that for what it's worth. But at the same time, again, this is Clemson's to lose. I don't think this is Florida State's year right now. I think maybe next year they can make a good possibility to make a case to beat Clemson and to get into the ACC title game, or maybe in the next 2 years. But this year, it's really Clemson is the absolute, monster train going downhill off the side of the mountain, and it's just going to take out whatever's in its path. The only teams that I could see possibly possessing some form of a challenge for them would be Virginia Tech or Miami in that ACC title game. But even then, I have Clemson going undefeated through the regular season, undefeated into, obviously, the ACC championship game, winning the ACC championship game, and most likely going into the college football playoff again as the number one ranked team.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you feel like, because I noticed with your Big Ten pick that you have Wisconsin, you also have Oklahoma in the Big 12. Is it because with the Big 10, is it because of the things that are going on in Ohio State that there's a lot of just uncertainty with the Ohio State program? And also, too, just in the Big 12, are there any challengers right now, or is it kind of like the ACC where the Big 12 is just rebuilding this year?
In terms of the Big 10, it's funny, the timing of my article, it would seem like, I picked Wisconsin because of all the things going on in Ohio State. I actually wrote the article back in early July before all of this came out and before Big Ten Media Day, and I picked Wisconsin. And I just think Wisconsin overall, with Alex Hornibrook at quarterback, Jonathan Taylor at running back, they have one of the best 1-2 punches in the Big Ten right now. And I know Ohio State, no matter who they put behind center at quarterback, is going to be a stellar athlete. That athlete, though, is going to be a little inexperienced. So when it comes down to it, I think Ohio State will do well this season. No matter if Urban Meyer's the head coach or not, Ohio State's going to have a pretty solid campaign this year. I mean, I could only see them losing 1 or 2 games, if that. So I think they're on a collision course again to meet in the Big Ten championship. I will say this, however, Wisconsin's schedule this season is going to be a lot harder than it was last season. They have a lot of tough road games this year, and their Big Ten schedule was very, very beneficial to them last year, not so beneficial to them this year. So Wisconsin's going to have to battle hard, or harder than they did last year. But I think they have, the experience, the mental fortitude, especially with Alex Hornibrook under center, Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. And then Paul Chryst, their coach, this guy, he's a football guy's guy. This guy, he knows what he's doing. And especially, he's the coach that's built for Big Ten weather, like built for just Big Ten football, Big Ten weather, Big Ten style, run, punt every once in a while, run, throwing a pass, throwing some play action, built just to run the ball down your throat, until you stop it. So I think with that combination, Wisconsin does it very well. They're very well coached. They'll have a strong offensive line coming back, and I just think Wisconsin this year can take that extra step forward, winning the Big Ten and possibly making it to the college football playoff. In terms of the Big 12 that you brought up, yeah, Oklahoma's won it. Now almost going 3 years in a row. Looking to win their 4th, and right now, yes, Texas will be better. Texas will be better under Tom Herman in his 2nd year, no doubt about it. But at the same time, Oklahoma's still a juggernaut. And everybody says, well, they lost Baker Mayfield. Okay, cool. They just replaced him with Kyler Murray, who's, in my opinion, just as good of a thrower, maybe not the best decision maker. We saw a little bit of that at A&M, but still, in my opinion, he's way faster than Baker Mayfield. Can throw it just as good, if not better, than Baker Mayfield. If he gets the decision making, which you can work that out in practice through the spring. Kyler Murray could be another Heisman candidate at Oklahoma the year after their Heisman Trophy winner had left for the draft and went to Cleveland. So, in my opinion, Oklahoma is the fastest team in college football. They got a speedy wide receiver in C.D. Lamb. They got Trey Norwood as a cornerback who's very fast. He's very young. I believe he's a true sophomore. He's either a true sophomore or just a regular redshirt sophomore. Very fast on the court on the outside. Rodney Anderson is a very downhill, hit-you-in-your-face type of running back that does not mind taking a hit or two just to get the extra yards. And that man, he torched Georgia in the first half of that Rose Bowl very well. Georgia's shutting him down in the second half, but also at the same time, Anderson can make some plays. And with the offense that Lincoln Riley runs, Oklahoma's geared up just to do another campaign to the Big 12. Now, do I think they'll make the college football playoff? I'm not too sure, because every year, again, Texas is getting better. That could be a potential game they may lose. I haven't looked too much at their schedule, but with the Big 12 this year, West Virginia's got a great team this year, especially led by their senior quarterback, Will Grier, who can sling it around. So when they play West Virginia, that'll be tough. Playing Oklahoma State every year is tough in the Bedlam game. Texas every year. So, Oklahoma's going to have a tough conference schedule, but they really are poised to win the Big 12 again for their 4th year in a row. And at this point, they are the fastest team. I can't reiterate that enough. They got a guy they nickname Hollywood.
Oh,
and
really?
It's for a reason, because this guy is flashy. This guy runs down the field. I forget what his last name is, and Oklahoma fans are going to kill me about this, but Marquise Hollywood Brown. That's it, Marquise Hollywood Brown. This man can fly. He did a lot of good things against Georgia in the Rose Bowl, just like Rodney Anderson. He showed up a little bit more in the second half. He had a first half touchdown, but he showed up a little bit more in the second half with some absolute speed. And he's the guy that you give him the ball on the sweep as a wide receiver, and he just does his thing. So Oklahoma is going to be one of the fastest teams in all of college football. And in the Big 12, if you can go fast, you can score points. And if you score points, obviously, you win. So I think Oklahoma is going to be all right in the Big 12. They may have a couple games, but I think the Big 12 overall is going to be more of a grinder this year. I feel like there's going to be a lot of teams in the middle of that pack For example, meaning I think there's going to be a lot of like 9-3, 8-4 teams in there because I think it's just going to be a bloodbath. But I think like at the end of the night or at the end of the year, Oklahoma is going to be the one that comes out on top in the Big 12.
Just tell me about Boise State because Boise State is obviously way out of this region. Not a lot of people in the South or probably on the East Coast are thinking Boise State this year, but you put them as your article cover with the image on your article. So tell me about Boise State, and do you think that this is going to be the year that Lane Kiffin gets his redemption and ends up back at a big boy program?
All right, I'll start with Boise State. Boise, to me, is going to be the team that wins out of the group of five, and I think they'll play in one of their favorite bowl games, the Fiesta Bowl. So I've picked Boise to win the Mountain West. I also picked them to do very well this year. They have a very easy schedule, in my opinion. They have a very good conference schedule. Their toughest conference games are going to be at home. I think they only have one semi-tough game on the road, and it's really not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. Their non-conference schedule is all right. They play at Oklahoma State, but at the same time, Oklahoma State kind of finds himself in an awkward down year a little bit, so to say. Not a lot of hype coming out of Stillwater. So I think Boise State is going to be a good team this year. I think they will, win the Mountain West, represent the Power Five as that group of five team. It's going to be between them and Memphis, in my opinion, and I think Boise State just overall is pretty solid. They lost their middle linebacker, Leighton Vander Esch, to the draft. Got drafted by the Cowboys in the first round. But other than that, Boise State pretty much reloads. I mean, they got a great quarterback coming back. So it's kind of like Clemson of the ACC. Boise State is the Clemson of their conference. It's theirs to lose. Right. And in terms of Florida Atlantic, what Lane Kiffin has done there is insane. He just signed within the past couple months. He signed a 10-year deal, I believe, to still stay there. Through almost like 2027, 2028.
Wow!
That.
They got him.
So Lane's inks for a long time. I think after this season, I predicted them to win Conference USA. They should win it again for the second year in a row. They are an absolute juggernaut down there for their conference. They can, in all honesty, FAU could probably play with some bigger teams because they got a lot of speed. They got a great running back in Singletary coming back. Lane's done an excellent job at recruiting. He's gotten, almost 4 or 5-star talent coming to Florida Atlantic. He's got a couple guys from Last Chance U that were 4 or 5-star recruits out of high school that are coming now to FAU after their stint at East Mississippi Community College over there in Scuba. But at the same time, Lane putting the good mix of recruiting plus the winning mantra. I do think Lane's going to get a couple calls at the end of this season from some bigger programs. Who he gets calls from, I don't know. I can't really gauge how the coaching carousel is going to work out at the end of the season. But what I can tell you is that don't be surprised if you hear different teams kind of trying to circle their wagons around Lane Kiffin's camp at the end of the season, because I think he'll be getting some calls from some bigger programs, possibly even a couple Power 5 programs, maybe not huge Power 5 programs, at like a Georgia or a Michigan or a Florida or a Notre Dame level.
Do you think he's burned that bridge, though?
I'm sorry?
Do you think he's burned that bridge of trying to get into the SEC or the Pac-12 or any like the big conferences in college football?
All right, I'll put it this way. I think some of those conferences would be a little bit more skeptical. I think they would really take their time with the interview process a little bit more than they may be for other teams, especially in the SEC. But I would say don't be surprised. For example, and I'm just throwing this out there. This is just kind of an example. I'm not saying this school will contact Lane Kiffin, but a school kind of like, let's just say Indiana.
Okay.
Right? Power 5 program in a big conference like the Big Ten, traditionally not a huge football powerhouse, but still looking to make some waves, still looking to kind of creep their way into an 8-4 or a 9-3 season. I feel like a team like that may go after Lane Kiffin, maybe like in Indiana. In the SEC, maybe, I don't know. It's kind of hard to gauge the SEC right now because it's pretty close. Vanderbilt maybe, because I don't think Vanderbilt's going to be that good. And if Derek Mason doesn't get it done this year, I would expect him to be gone. But, maybe a smaller school that's not football isn't the biggest, athletic priority there, possibly. But, your SEC schools and your Pac-12 schools, they may be a little bit more skeptical. But at this time, it's been quite a few years since he's been at one of those places. So more schools may be desperate to win, more desperate to win than more desperate to reflect on a guy's history at past schools. And the thing was, he left Tennessee in a bad way. He didn't leave USC in a bad way. USC fired him. USC kind of did him dirty. The way he did Tennessee dirty, USC kind of did him dirty. I mean, he showed up at LAX after at 3 a.m. after a flight from Phoenix, after losing, having 63 points put up on him against Arizona State. And the AD, Pat Hayden, was there and said, bro, pack your bags, you gone.
What about this? What about this?
The AD met in the terminal, and he just sat there kind of like with his hands up like, really, this is how it's going to go down? I ain't gonna clean up my office.
Right.
So.
What about this? This kind of just popped in my mind. Sorry about that. But what about Ohio State if things go south for Urban Meyer? Would he be a viable candidate if Ohio State parted ways with Urban Meyer?
First of all, I answer this in two ways. One, at this point, I know I wrote an article a couple weeks ago about the situation. It's looking more and more like the athletic director, Gene Smith, didn't do what he needed to do in his regard. So I think, personally, at this point, I'm kind of changing my view on this. And first retrospect, when I looked at it, I said, Urban Meyer's gone. Definitely, he's out. But now, in looking at all the details and how some other things have come out about Zach Smith and his wife's relationship and some things that had happened down in Florida, and then also some things that have really happened at Ohio State. And Ohio State has a couple other scandals that nobody's really talking about with their wrestling program and their swimming and diving program in Columbus. So a lot of things in Columbus are pointing towards Gene Smith, their AD, being removed by either the president or the chancellor at Ohio State University. But I think, at the end of the day, Urban Meyer, they're going to find a way for him to have his job. They're going to find a way, because at the same time, the evidence for Urban Meyer isn't pointing towards that he knew exactly what was going on. This is what was happening. He had knowledge of it, but now it's almost looking more towards like Urban Meyer did what he was always instructed to do in situations like that. The AD just didn't do anything about it after that. Right. So kind of like the AD is almost indirectly throwing Urban under the bus. So I think Urban will be the coach. I don't think Gene Smith will be the AD much longer, sooner rather than later. And in all honesty, that's probably what it will get down to. But at the same time, if Urban gets fired from Ohio State's in a position, they're in a very rare position, just like Alabama is. They can pick whoever they want on this planet to be their head coach, and that person will most likely say yes. I mean, other than Nick Saban, Ohio State can most likely get anybody they want. I mean, right. Kirby Smart, if they throw enough money at him, Kirby may consider leaving Georgia. Now, I'm not saying Kirby would ever leave Georgia. I'm just saying
don't
Ohio
scare
State's
people over here, David.
Right now. It's like you got your major programs, in the SEC and the ACC and the Big Ten and the Big 12, but then there's some within those power conferences that can kind of do whatever they want and get whoever they want. Alabama's one like that. They got Nick Saban to leave the NFL. Granted, Saban was pretty bad in the NFL. Ohio State can kind of pull whoever they want. Michigan can pull whoever they want. Notre Dame can pull whoever they want. For a while there, Florida was the one that could pull whoever they wanted, and Florida did pull whoever they wanted, and the people they pulled weren't that good. Right, so, right. There's a couple programs that can do that. Ohio State is one of those programs. So if Urban leaves for whatever reason, I wouldn't be surprised if the Buckeyes brought in somebody from the NFL, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the Buckeyes, brought in, just some other coach that's really good, that's on the rise, and, got him from whoever. Maybe, Texas is kind of at that level, but I could even see Ohio State pitching to Tom Herman. Mm-hmm. I could see Ohio State, and this is going to sound kind of crazy, Ohio State pitching to Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma.
Right.
I could see that. And then again, People would argue Oklahoma's at that level where they can pull anybody. But then my counterpoint to that would be, well, when Bob Stoops left, they were kind of in a position they didn't want to pull anybody. Granted, Bob Stoops left, close to the beginning of the season, or stepped down at the beginning of the season. But at the same time, Ohio State can get whoever they want, and they will get whoever they want if Urban Meyer does end up getting fired or resigns.
I
highly doubt he'll resign.
I don't want to spend too much time on this, but if Washington, say, manhandles Auburn in Mercedes-Benz in 15 days, do you think they could possibly be undefeated?
I think Washington will beat Auburn. That's another big take of mine. I think Washington's going to beat them. I think it's going to be a close game. But if Washington can pull that upset, they do have the tools to go undefeated. They do have a couple games that are going to be tough. Oregon and Stanford, they have to play every year in the Pac-12 North. That's going to be tough. And I believe they also have UCLA. Now, UCLA is rebuilding. They don't have Josh Rosen anymore. But at the same time, UCLA has nothing to lose. So to me, that almost seems like a big trap game for Washington. And again, the Apple Cup going up against a Mike Leach team at the end of the year against Washington State, that's always kind of a toss-up. So I don't know if Washington will go undefeated. The Stanford and Oregon games really stand out to me as huge games that they could lose, especially against Stanford with Bryce Love. And David Shaw, to me, is one of the smartest college football coaches that I've ever seen. He also seems like one of the nicest people on the face of the earth.
Right.
So I have a lot of respect for David Shaw, and he's done a really good job at Stanford and kind of flown under the radar. He was there with Andrew Luck, but at the same time, he's kept Stanford very consistent. Even without Andrew Luck, they've still had a pretty solid program. And with a Heisman candidate like Bryce Love at tailback this year, Stanford's going to be able to do some things. Now, that Washington-Stanford game and the Washington-Oregon game, again, probably will decide the Pac-12 North. But at the same time, I don't know if they'll go undefeated. It is very hard to go undefeated in college football these days. But if it comes down to it, Washington, with their schedule, it's going to be very, very tough. But at the same time, if they pull off that Auburn upset, that may give them enough momentum to say, you know what, we can do this, and just go into each game and win it. Now, granted, there have been games in the past 2 years under Chris Peterson that Washington, when they had a really solid program, but they just fell flat on their face. I mean, they lost to Arizona State at home last year. Arizona State, who was absolute garbage last year. They lost to them at home. So, if the passing game's working for Jake Browning, it's going to be a good night. But if it's not, it's kind of tough. It's been tough for Washington the past couple of years to try to figure out kind of like a plan B sort of thing. So in the question of will they go undefeated if they beat Auburn, the odds are really good for them too. But they got a really tough schedule in the thick of things in the middle of October.
Wow.
So if they can survive October, they possibly could end up undefeated.
Interesting. Now I want to talk about the topic that I know everyone is curious about, especially if they read your article. You have in the SEC, you don't have Auburn winning the conference. You don't have even Alabama winning the conference. You think the Georgia Bulldogs are going to repeat as SEC champions. Why are you thinking that?
Well, I think it's going to be a Georgia versus Alabama game. And Georgia has done really good in redemption and revenge games. Even under Mark Richt, they were pretty good at it. And I just think this year, I'll backtrack a little bit. Alabama is most likely going to start Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback. I'm pretty sure I just butchered his name. But at the same time, I think they're going to start Tua. And I was actually looking online, and I've been doing my research a little bit more this summer. Tua had a great season last year as a backup, and he did really good in the national championship game. But number one, he's never really started. Number two, he's never played against really solid opponents at solid defenses. He's gone in in chump time when Alabama was up by 40, against Vanderbilt, against Arkansas, and against Ole Miss. He went in, against those teams' third defenses. So defenses, and I don't necessarily like this phrase, are gonna quote unquote figure him out, but they're going to figure out ways and kind of in film sessions, kind of pick apart what he doesn't do right, and they're going to adjust their defenses to that. So they're going to figure out ways to not necessarily stop him, but possibly slow him down or force him into some bad decisions.
Right.
And I think eventually it's going to catch up to him. Now, will Alabama lose a game this year? I don't know. I don't know if they'll go undefeated. They have a pretty decent schedule, and the SEC West isn't as strong, other than Alabama, outside of really Auburn. It really isn't as strong. And Mississippi State's going to be decent this year, but, the Tide get Mississippi State at home. But Georgia, on the other hand, Georgia's got a lot of weapons. And, yes, I know they lost Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, but Georgia has 4 5-star running backs and then 1 4-star running back. So Georgia's got some weapons. They got weapons on the outside, and Terry Godwin and Mecole Hardman at wide receiver. They also got Riley Ridley at wide receiver. They're going to have an offensive line this year that's arguably better than it was last year.
Do you think they're going to have
It's going to have people that have played a lot. They don't have a lot of starters returning, Georgia does, but they have a lot of guys with a lot of game experience. The thing that people take and they say, oh, well, they don't have this many starters returning, or they only have like 4 or 5 starters returning on defense. Georgia rotates almost every single play. Georgia pulls people in and out, and that's what a lot of people don't realize is, we don't have 4 or 5 starters coming back from last year. And I say, we, just because I can always consider myself a Georgia fan, but they have a lot of talent coming back that has gotten a lot of experience. Alabama's the same way. That's what Saban has always done. Kirby Smart got that mentality and got that methodology from Saban. So that methodology, that system, and those standards that they've set up at the program have led Georgia to very good success last year. Georgia does have the best shot to win the East this year. They have a very good chance to, do very well, almost go undefeated in the East. I think Georgia has the ability to do that. I think Georgia has the ability to win the East, play in Atlanta. And then when it gets down to it, Georgia's going to look at the film of Tua from this year, and they're also going to, look at the film from last year and say, this is what we did wrong when we had him last year. This is what we did wrong on 2nd and 26 in the national championship game. This is what we did wrong in the second half when he came back, and threw 2 touchdown passes. So Georgia's going to make those adjustments, and you got to know, you have to know that all those Georgia players that were on the team last year have 2nd and 26 in the back of their mind. They have 2nd and 26 written on some place in their locker or on some, video screen in the locker room or in the weight room. And that's what they're going to be working for. And I'm telling you what, I know it's been a season ago, but revenge always comes back at some point to play a part in a team's game plan of not letting it happen again. And I just think Georgia can win the SEC championship again. Now, granted, I also think I think both teams could possibly go undefeated into that game, and both teams, no matter who wins, could still possibly make the playoff. So a lot can happen, but I think Georgia, with the revenge factor and with the depth and the experience, I think they can do it. Now, Alabama lost about 9 defensive players to the NFL draft. Now, granted, who they have coming back, just one person off the top of my head, Anthony Jennings. I mean, Alabama, again, they don't rebuild, they reload. So Alabama's going to be there. Alabama's going to be a contender no matter what. But I just think Georgia can do it again this year in Atlanta by winning the SEC championship.
Do you think that they're going to have the offensive line that can go against that defensive line that Bama has? Because you can run around Bama, but eventually it's going to get back. It's going to catch up to you, and the way you beat Alabama is just straight up.
Yeah, that offensive line versus defensive line matchup, if Georgia and Alabama do play, Georgia's O-line versus Alabama's D-line is going to be insane. A good matchup to see down there, what I would love to see, is one of their defensive linemen for Alabama, Isaiah Buggs. He didn't get a lot of credit because Daron Payne got a lot of the attention from the D-line, but Isaiah Buggs is an absolute monster. Very fast off the snap, can get to the quarterback, can put a lot of pressure on a defense or on an offensive line and put a pressure on the quarterback of the other team. That Isaiah Buggs going up against Ben Cleveland, who's now a junior at Georgia, who's been there since he came in with Jacob Eason a couple of years ago, has been in the system. So it's like you have 2 veterans going up against each other. All right. I'd also like to see not just Ben Cleveland going up against Isaiah Buggs, but also Andrew Thomas on Georgia's offensive line. Andrew Thomas is a true sophomore, a very highly recruited offensive lineman. Came to Georgia last year, started as a true freshman, very, very talented. Did a lot of good things for Georgia this year and didn't get a lot of attention because Isaiah Wynn did a lot of great things. And Isaiah Wynn was that senior leader on the line. But now, with a whole season under his belt, I think Andrew Thomas is ready to really take off. So I'd love to either see him or Ben Cleveland on that line go up against Isaiah Buggs, because Isaiah Buggs is a talented individual. And then when Alabama's blitzing Anthony Jennings, watch out. Alabama's still got some speed. I don't care how many people they lose the NFL, Alabama still has speed. So if that SEC championship matchup comes to fruition, the speed of Georgia on offense versus the speed of Alabama on defense is going to be huge. But that offensive line versus defensive line battle, that's going to be one to watch. And that may be the matchup, the unit versus unit matchup, that dictates how that game goes and dictates who can win. Because if whoever wins that battle in the trenches, especially on that side of the ball, can do it. Now, Alabama's got a veteran offensive line coming back, and Georgia doesn't have a huge veteran defensive line. They got a couple guys down there that'll do some damage, but like Jonathan Ledbetter, for example, for Georgia. But at the same time, Alabama's veteran offensive line, can they handle Georgia's defensive line, or is it the other way? Could Georgia's defensive line handle Alabama's offensive line?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all the time we have for you, David. I think we need to bring you back before college football season starts so we can do a part 2 on this, because I'd still want to hear what you have to say about the Heisman race and your predictions for the New Year's Six and the playoffs. So we just want to thank you for having you on. And where can we reach you out on social media outside of fansfavoritefan.com if we want to contact
the two
you?
biggest places to reach me, I would say, are Twitter and Instagram, at Coach D Berger on both of them.
Okay.
So, Twitter and Instagram at Coach D Berger.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, sure, man. No problem. Good to talk to you.
All right. Now we just want to thank David for coming on the show today. Also just want to thank Steve Choi for sitting in with me. And like I said, we are on fansfavoritefan.com, so be sure to check out that website now. Definitely going to love it. Has a really cool score ticker to it. We have a lot of great content all about college football. This weekend, if you're in the Atlanta metro area and you're coming to Corky Kell, we are going to be all over Corky Kell this weekend on social media. So check back at Fans Favorite Fan on social media. And now we have a new podcasting hosting platform that we're using, and that allows us to share the podcast easily on social media. So wherever you see this podcast on social media, be sure to hit that like button. Definitely would appreciate it. Also, too, this show is about the ATL sports fan. So if you're a Dogs fan, Falcons fan, Atlanta United, Braves, Hawks, we want your input on the show, so be sure to leave a comment in the comment section, because I definitely want to see what you guys are thinking. Also, let me know what you think of Corky Kell and just high school football here in the state of Georgia. Also, too, if you know the story about the Tech alumni who is with the Russell organization, definitely put that story in the comment section, because we would love to get the facts right on that story. So be sure to put that in the comment section, because this is the way you can directly interact with the show. This internet age is a really interesting thing that we can have instant feedback. So hope you guys have a good weekend. If you're checking out Corky Kell or the Braves or whatever you're doing, be safe, and I hope it's an awesome weekend. We're only about 2 weekends away from college football, so I know that everyone's getting excited around here about the season. When Corky Kell starts, pretty much the season officially starts for Fans' Favorite Fan. Check out Fans' Favorite Fan. Episode 76 is out.